In the words of Jeremy Clarkson, it's a supercar unplugged. It's one of the most exquisite, shocking, and diabolical cars to ever leave a factory. What started life as a secret underground project aimed squarely at taking on the unforgivable and brutal 24 hours of Le Mans would ultimately be left abandoned by its maker. That is, of course, until the madmen at Porsche stripped it down for parts, repurposed the technology, and gave the world the absolute pinnacle of analog supercars. This is the automotive legend with a heart stolen straight from a Formula One racer. A car synonymous with pure excitement and untamable personality. So much personality, in fact, that Leno, the Stig, and even racing legend Walter Rohl couldn't keep it from biting him on track. It has a clutch light enough to stall almost constantly without proper experience, an engine imported directly from the automotive gods, and a seemingly illegal lack of electronic assists. It's brutal and pure. It's beauty and the beast. It's the Porsche Carrera GT. Let's take a trip back to 2004. It was Porsche's entrance into the flagship supercar segment of the 2000s. Weighing in at just 3,100 pounds, you get a full carbon fiber body structure, pushrod suspension setup, radical design, and a 6-speed manual transmission connected to the pounding F1-inspired heart. A 5.7-liter V10 engine that sounds sweeter than just about anything you'll ever see on the road. Close your eyes, crank the volume, and just listen to this. It's a symphonic masterpiece of Porsche engineering. Just under 1,300 examples ever left the production line, at a base price of nearly 450 grand. Steep, I know. But for that wad of cash, you were stepping into a machine set up for some of the most incredible performance feats of its generation. Back at its debut in 2003 at the Geneva Motor Show, it was easy to write it off as little more than an attention grabber for Porsche's more lucrative Cayenne project, which was displayed the same year. But the Carrera GT endeavor was the culmination of over a decade of racing success, failures, and back and forth between the dedicated engineers and demanding corporate HQ. Turn the clock back a bit further. In the late 80s, Porsche was supplying engines for Formula One, and by the 1990s, they'd established themselves as the undeniable king of motor racing, chalking up 16 overall Le Mans wins by that point. They were untouchable. Trouble was, road racing wasn't getting nearly the attention Formula One was. Wanting to make a name for themselves in the open-wheeled arena, they tossed their engineering hat into the ring, and developed an engine to dethrone them all. And this very project began what would eventually become the soul of the savage Carrera GT. Famed engineer Hans Metzger, who did the engines for some of the best Porsche GT cars of all time, was tasked with creating the winning formula. Pun intended. He started with an insane twin-turbo V6 capable of around 1,000 horsepower. But when restrictions came to F1 and did away with turbochargers, engineers offered up a new 680 horsepower V12 based on that Metzger 6. Essentially 2 of them grafted together. But poor performance and durability quickly disqualified the new 12-cylinder as their ticket to victory. Engineers refined the V12 even further, and once again, the big V12 was rejected by the even bigger bosses, saying it was still too large, too heavy for Formula One. Yet again, it was back to the drawing board, and draw they did. Porsche's new attempt at an F1 engine was now a V10. It was 3.5 liters, produced a competitive 760 horsepower, and had an ear-shattering 14,800 RPM redline. But still, it wasn't enough for the higher-ups to give the go-ahead for Formula One. But as depressing as it was that we never got to hear that V10 run laps at Monaco, it wasn't the end for that engine. It just had to wait its turn. Porsche stuck it on a shelf and went back to more conventional racing, competing for the next few years in the GT1 series with what they knew best: flat sixes. However, the boys in Stuttgart couldn't seem to keep their grubby little fingers off the bid for another Le Mans win in the year 2000. But all of Porsche's money had been spent on the all-new water-cooled 911, the Boxster, and a complete retooling of the factory to adopt the Toyota production system. So what did they do? Well, they peeled the plastic off the now old V10 F1 engine, upped its displacement, made it Le Mans legal, and built a crazy prototype chassis to go along with it. This prototype would have likely finished podium at the big race in 2000, seeing as it set a lap record at Porsche's Weissach facility during testing. That is, if it had ever gotten to the Le Mans green flag in the first place. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Porsche's bosses once again nixed the idea. And in favor of what, you ask? Some rebadged Touareg SUV called the Cayenne. And the enthusiasts were pissed. But as you know, that decision is what kept Porsche from falling off the face of the earth. Their financial commitment to the Cayenne and affordable yet wonderful Boxster ended up literally saving the company. But back to the GT. Porsche knew that the next few years would be packed with supercar competition, so they hastily yet artfully designed a mid-engine Le Mans-inspired prototype and plunked in that old F1 V10 to draw a crowd at Geneva. See, rumor had it that Ferrari was building something called the Enzo, Bugatti was eyeing a comeback with big power in the Veyron, and McLaren, coming off their incredible run with the world-beating F1, was teaming up with Mercedes to do the SLR. Not to mention Audi was sneaking around with plans for the R8 too. And while Porsche's own 911 Turbo and GT RS cars could hold their own on track, they couldn't quite drum up excitement like a proper exotic. The pressure was on, and Porsche had to prove that their near bankruptcy wasn't for nothing. Their next big debut had to be something groundbreaking. And the now bigger 5.7-liter 603 horsepower V10 laid at the center of their comeback. They went against the grain of what most other supercar makers were doing at the time by mating it to a 6-speed manual, something we appreciate more and more as the years tick by. To get the weight as low in the car as possible, they omitted the flywheel, allowing them to place the top of the engine about right in line with the top of the rear tires. The monocoque holding everything together was made completely of carbon fiber and weighed just 220 pounds by itself, something only seen previously in the McLaren F1. And all that, coupled with the stiff pushrod suspension setup, made for an insane amount of capability out on track. Its production-ready exterior was actually designed in the US of all places, in sunny California. But that didn't matter. Yes, it's flashy and low and wide, but the way the front and rear mirror each other and curve around to the sides of the car were done so well that enthusiasts were convinced it was something quintessentially Porsche, and that remains true to this day. It had center-lock color-coded wheel fasteners, big flowing intakes, and a giant double-bubble engine cover that lets you know there's something special hiding underneath. Inside, a very simple interior with a few big gauges, leather bucket seats that use a Velcro pad for adjustable lumbar, a keyed ignition on the left because Porsche, and a beechwood shift knob that's mounted super high on the center console and serves as a tribute to the dominant Porsche 917 race car. Look even deeper into the Carrera GT's insides and you'll find its infamously difficult clutch. Not only are the pressure plates small and intricate, but the car has no flywheel at all, meaning your insurance company and wallet will thank you for practicing rev matching on something cheaper before hopping behind the wheel of a CGT. That being said, like the brakes, it's made of carbon fiber and silicon carbide, and Porsche tested it to 16,000 race starts, so it's a bit tricky, but not delicate. And while the early press cars were reportedly insanely stable on track, it seems like for one reason or another, the customer cars had handling characteristics more like the original Widowmaker. All of its quirks taken together made this car a handful and a near liability to drive on the street. Considering it gets to 60 miles an hour in just 3.5 seconds, runs a quarter mile in 11.2, and tops out at around 208 miles an hour, I'd like to see anyone drive one without a pucker or two. It is truly one of the last analog supercars to ever touch the streets, and unfortunately also the centerpiece of several crashes that forever branded the CGT as downright dangerous. A journalist wrecked one at the press launch. Rumor has it that the legend that is Walter Rohl had a lot of trouble controlling it during a Nürburgring testing session. Jay Leno spun a CGT into the infield at Talladega. Top Gear's Stig couldn't get his to stick to the track. Supercar collector Ben Chen destroyed one on a city street, and most notably and tragically, the beloved Paul Walker of the Fast franchise was killed while in the passenger seat of a red Carrera GT during a spirited drive on a Californian public road. All of these accidents had different levels of driver fault, and at least 2 of them point to potential maintenance neglect. Remember to check your tires, folks. It's still debated today as to whether the Carrera GT itself had a bad temper, or if its drivers pushed the car past its limits. In fact, just after spinning the CGT, the Stig set the fastest Top Gear lap ever in the same car. So who knows? This car indirectly marked a pivotal time in the course of sports car development. And it's almost hard to believe a 600 plus horsepower manual transmission carbon fiber bodied car legally made it to the streets with no electronic assists whatsoever. It didn't even have airbags. It was Porsche's second attempt at a moonshot halo car, and a night and day shift from the tech-forward 959 that came just a decade before it. No car of this magnitude will ever be built without strict safety nets in place ever again. The Carrera GT was unmistakably a product of its time, and its combination of unchained power, timeless design, and driver involvement make it go down in history as one of the all-time greats. And all that makes it perhaps the most ideal car. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to Ideal for more stories like this coming along every single week. Go check out a few others like it right over on the side there. My name's Trav, and I'll see you all very soon.